Hey guys, Dan here. Welcome to this week's TV news and reviews. We've got some cool, interesting things to talk about this week, both in the news section and the reviews. For reviews, we're going to take a look at the new HBO series, His Dark Materials. We've got a very inventive, I guess, original type show on Hulu called Dollface. We've got a show from Over the Pond that is coming to Showtime called Back to Life. And then we've got a trio of new kids shows out there: Blue's Clues and You, Green Eggs and Ham on Netflix, and The Rocketeer for Disney. So we're going to talk about all of that. But first, our news portion. I've been leading lately, now that we're pretty much like firmly entrenched in the TV season, about what shows have gotten renewed or canceled. No cancellations that I've heard, but a few interesting renewals. One is Undone, which is on Amazon Prime, and the only show so far this year I've given an A to. I loved this thing. It's the rotoscoping animation show about the girl who is, living this, young woman. She's not a girl. She's, in her 20s. Or maybe even her 30s, but sort of living this humdrum existence, and gets into a car accident, and then all of a sudden she's seeing images of her deceased father, played by Bob Odenkirk. It's a 6-episode series, and I'm so happy it got renewed for season 2. I don't know that it necessarily needed it for the storyline, but they did leave it open-ended enough that, I think we can definitely fall into a second season and have it be very good. So I'm excited about that. Brooklyn Nine-Nine has been renewed for season 8 before season 7 even premieres in February, so that is good news. This is a show that has come back from the dead. It was, resurrected by NBC after being canceled by Fox, and admittedly, it had very low ratings on Fox. I hated to see it go, but at the same time, I was like, all right, it got, 4 or 5 good seasons on Fox here. But NBC picked it up, as it is the main production company of the show, so it serves them actually to keep making more episodes, because then it can sell into syndication longer and that type of thing. But I love Brooklyn Nine-Nine. I'm currently on the previous season, as I am, a little backlogged on my shows sometimes. So I'm watching season 6 right now, but it's still very good. I miss Gina Linetti. She leaves in the beginning of season 6, so she won't be a part of the show moving forward. But NBC is sort of struggling on their Thursdays to find that footing, because The Good Place is not necessarily a ratings success, but it's huge in the industry. It is one of the few network shows that garners Emmy Awards. But this is the last season for that. The Will and Grace revival, this is the last season for. And so that leaves them with Superstore anchoring the night. But then what else do they have? Because Sunnyside's already been moved to the online platforms, and then Perfect Harmony, I don't know how it's doing in the ratings. I guess okay enough to still be on Thursdays, unlike Sunnyside, but I don't know. I mean, I didn't like it very much as a show. I haven't seen even the second episode yet, so I'm not sure if it's connecting with the audiences like they need it to be. So, renewing Brooklyn Nine-Nine for another season, even before the current one begins, is a smart move for them. I think they need a good Thursday night again. So we'll see what happens with that. I guess they'll probably do Superstore, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and maybe then 2 new shows. Because I don't think they have any other half-hour shows to even shuffle in. Most of their nights are full-on hour shows. ABC has also renewed their Summer Fun and Games series, all 6 of them. Like the 2 new ones, which are Card Sharks and Press Your Luck, and they're coming back. And then you've got like The Pyramid, The Celebrity Family Feud, Match Game, and what's the other one? To Tell the Truth. All of which I watch, except for The Family Feud. I don't know. Steve Harvey gets on my nerves. But yeah, I like all of those shows, so I'm glad that they're doing well with that. ABC released a statement basically saying, this is great branding for us in the summer. People have, come to expect that they will be able to, sit down and watch a show even if it's already 20 minutes in and not be lost, because it's just a game. So they're sticking with that. I think it's a great formula. I love the way they're doing like all the retro sets, and Alec Baldwin even has that like long microphone that Gene Rayburn used to have. So enough said about that. But the most interesting renewal of the week is something that a lot of people in the industry were sort of wondering, is this going to even continue, or is this going to kill the show? Days of Our Lives is renewed finally for the 56th season, which, from what I read, is the longest standing entertainment program on NBC. I thought maybe The Tonight Show would be longer, but apparently not. So I don't know. Maybe they're not considering that an entertainment show. Maybe it's considered a talk show. I don't know. But in terms of, like, I think by entertainment they mean, like, not Meet the Press, because that's been on since the 40s. Not like the NBC Nightly News, like, not a news program. So look, I don't watch soap operas. I never really have. I mean, I sort of dialed in a little bit to General Hospital in the high school years. But there's only 4 of these shows left on the networks. You've got General Hospital still on ABC, does very well. And then Guiding Light, I think, is still on CBS. And then there's one more on NBC. It's Days of Our Lives, and it might be As the World Turns. To be honest, I don't know. I could look it up, but I don't know. But last week or the week before, there was a big news statement saying everybody in the cast has been taken off their contracts. They've been released from their contracts. And so people in the industry were buzzing, like, okay, what does this mean for the show? What does this mean for daytime soap operas? Blah, blah, blah. Now, they had enough episodes in the can. They shoot these so far in advance. They had enough in the can to go through the end of the summer. So it wasn't a matter of, like, oh, this is going to be off the air tomorrow. They shoot these things way ahead of time. So we were already going to get enough episodes to last through that, but they have come back and done new contracts for everybody, and well, I don't know if everybody is returning. I don't watch the show, so I don't know who was all even on it, but look, even though I don't watch soaps, I watch nighttime soaps, though. Like I liked Desperate Housewives, and I like, are there any currently that I watch? I guess Riverdale could be considered a soap. 90210, I watched the reboot, but that was more of a reality show type of thing. But there you go. Even as a kid, like 90210, nighttime soap, that was huge, for me and my family. So I like the concept of the soap. Do I watch the daytime ones? No, but I don't really watch TV in the daytime anyway. Like, I love Price is Right. If that went away, I would be very sad, but, the last time I sat down and watched an episode of Price is Right was, I don't know, a year ago maybe. It's not something that I watch, but it's nice to know that it's there, I guess, which doesn't pay the bills for the networks, and it doesn't, help advertisers, so I'm just talking out of my butt, I guess, about the importance of it. But just from a historical standpoint, I think soap operas are so integral to the television landscape and the history of television. And, when you've got these shows that have been on for literally decades, General Hospital is like the new kid on the block, and that's been from the 70s, I think, but that's like young in terms of soap operas, because a lot of these have been on for that long. And some of them started on radio. I mentioned Guiding Light earlier. I don't know if that's the one that's still on CBS or not. It might be Bold and the Beautiful. They might have moved. Guiding Light might have been one of the ones they moved to, like, an online platform, and then it died out a couple years after that. But, Guiding Light was a radio show, and then it was a TV show. So, that dates back to the 40s, I think. So, these are just institutions at this point. It would be like if The Tonight Show went off the air. Or at this point, even Saturday Night Live. That's been this is 45th season. That's something that you just expect will always be there. I guess the difference would be Saturday Night Live still generates content that people talk about, and I don't think anybody really, for the most part, is like following along with these storylines. They do hit between 1 and 2 million viewers per day still, which is good, but when you consider that things like talk shows are a lot cheaper to produce, because you don't have to pay the actors and stuff, you just pay the host, and the guests, probably you pay like a little bit, maybe a couple $100 or whatever to come on, but the studio audience is free, all that kind of stuff. So I don't know, maybe it's a little more expensive to produce them, but I was glad to see that, they came to a resolution on the contracts, and they're all coming back for Days of Our Lives, season 56. Again, it's not something I'm going to watch, but I think, as an institution for television, I just think it's important. So I was glad to see that. And speaking of, talk shows being cheaper to produce and stuff, we've already talked about Drew Barrymore getting a talk show for next year. Kelly Clarkson has been renewed as well. That's a renewal I didn't mention. It's the first of the new syndicated shows to get a renewal. You've got Judge Jerry and the Tamron Hall Show, which are both doing, I guess, okay, but Kelly's really the breakout of the new syndicated talk show circuit. And so she has been renewed for season 2 already. But in addition to the new Drew Barrymore show, we're going to get a Nick Cannon show in 2020. I sort of like Nick Cannon. I am really on the fence with him because I think he's a good host. When he was doing America's Got Talent, and now I watch The Masked Singer. I think he's a good host. But I don't know. I think he's kind of weird sometimes. I think all the outfits, he's kind of like CeeLo. He reminds me like with the crazy outfits and stuff. He comes out in like these, king's outfits or a turban or like, it's just like, dude, what are you doing? Like, just be yourself. But maybe that is him. We'll see how he is as a talk show host. I mean, like, he does okay at interviewing people in America's Got Talent. He doesn't really interview people for The Masked Singer, but to sit down with somebody and like have a chat with them, I don't know. I will certainly watch the first episode or two from an intrigue standpoint, but we'll see, how he goes with that. But that'll be in 2020 as well. So we've already got 2 now new syndicated shows to look forward to in 2020: Nick Cannon and Drew Barrymore. So the final news segment I want to talk about is this web network, I guess, called Quibi. It's Quibi, and I had sort of heard this name bandied about off and on maybe over the last couple of months, but just this last week there's been like a deluge of news stories about so-and-so signs a deal with Quibi, this show is going to be on Quibi, Quibi has this. So I looked up what it even is because I didn't know, is it another Hulu or Netflix or Apple Plus kind of thing. It sort of is, but there's a couple of twists that make it quite different from anything that's out there. Number one, it's not going to be at least at this point, it's not going to premiere till April, so anything could happen in the next 5 months with it, but it's not going to be a television type of platform where like Netflix you can put it on your TV, or Hulu you can put it on your TV with like a Fire Stick or with a Roku or something. From what I understand, it's going to be like an app only, and so you can only watch it on your phone or I guess maybe on your computer. Now, will people rig things up to watch it on their TVs? Of course, if they want to. I probably don't know how to do that, but I'm sure some do. But the other thing that really sets it apart is that this is a quick form entertainment platform. It is not going to be half-hour or hour-long shows. Everything is going to be 10 minutes or less episodes. So it opens it up to a lot of things because, maybe this explains some of the big names that are signing on, which I'll tell you about. But, at this point, I guess people are signing on, all the A-listers are doing shows, these days anyway, from, Jennifer Aniston and Nicole Kidman, on down. So maybe that has nothing to do with it. But I think it's interesting that they're going to be doing episodes less than 10 minutes. And this is something that obviously has been going on for years through, going back to the movie serials of the 30s and then on to like, Looney Tune cartoon packages, Three Stooges, although even that's longer than 10 minutes. I think the Stooges are like 16 to 18 minutes. But, and then you have stuff like Cartoon Network, which is, everything sort of in 15-minute segments at night during their Adult Swim thing. There's very few shows on there that are a full half hour. And same with a lot of the kids programming these days is more in 2 15-minute segments than a half hour long, which we'll get to actually a little bit later with the Rocketeer. So I think it's an interesting concept, but it's just some of the people that are signed on right now. So, Chrissy Teigen's going to do some kind of thing called, Chrissy's Court or something. That's going to be like a courtroom show. obviously just for fun. It's not like she's a judge, but she'll hand down rulings or stuff. Zac Efron's going to be doing a show. Bill Murray is going to be doing a show with Alyssa Milano. Steven Soderbergh has signed on to direct something. Steven Spielberg has done something that's going to be very interesting. It's going to be like an After Dark only. It's like, I forget the name of it. Let me see if I can look it up here. It's called like, Tales After Dark or something, and you can only access it at night, which is going to be, so it's like they're obviously trying, a lot of different things here to, separate themselves from the rest of the pack. And I think it's interesting. I mean, I don't know how I feel about like the quickness of it. Like, if you can tell a story in 10 minutes, great. But is it going to be all like, all serialized? Like, that I don't love. Although everything on Netflix and Hulu is basically serialized at this point anyway. So maybe it doesn't even matter. Yeah, it's going to be called Spielberg's After Dark. And you can only watch it at nighttime. So it sounds interesting. But there's a big slate of stuff out there right now. I don't know exactly. There's no descriptions for a lot of these, but there's probably, I don't know, 20 shows. Maybe there's a Justin Timberlake thing going on. And it runs the gamut from documentary to game shows to sci-fi to comedy. So they're gonna have a little bit of everything, but it's all gonna be in little bites. So I don't know. I think it's interesting. I think it'll be interesting to see if it's successful, or I don't know how much it is for a subscription. Like, they haven't released that data yet. It's all very new in the stages, but I just thought it was interesting that I'd been sort of hearing trickles about this platform, and then this week it was just like a barrage of news stories about it, about people that have signed on to different shows. So I don't know. We'll see as that progresses, I guess, how it's going to be. I don't know how the 10-minute format will lend itself to that. And the phone format, too. I mean, yes, I watch videos on my phone, but do I pull up Netflix on my phone? Not usually. I mean, if I'm working out on the treadmill, maybe. I've definitely done that. If I'm taking a bath, I've definitely done some Hulu shows. But, like, on the whole, I prefer to watch it on a television. So I don't know. So let's move into the review portion of the show, and we start off with the new HBO show, His Dark Materials. We've been doing a lot of HBO reviews on the show lately, because we had The Watchmen a few weeks ago, and then 2 weeks ago we did Mrs. Fletcher, which is the Catherine Hahn show. But now we go back to their Sunday night content, right, with The Watchmen, former home of Game of Thrones, former home of The Sopranos, Sundays on ABC, on HBO, I mean, has sort of always been their big night, their bread and butter. I believe Sex and the City was on Sundays. I think most of their big shows they put on Sundays. I don't know what the reason for that is, how that started, but here we go again with another show that they've aired on Sundays, and that's His Dark Materials. Now, this is sort of like the one we're going to be talking about later with Showtime, which is a collaboration from over the pond that we've brought here. This is from the BBC. All of these episodes already aired on the BBC. I think there's 6 total that are going to be in the first season. I'm sorry, there's 8 that will be in the first season. So HBO is releasing them, week by week as they do. And this is based on a Philip Pullman series of novels. This is one of the books, or maybe the whole series, I guess, umbrella is called His Dark Materials. It includes The Golden Compass, which they made into a movie about maybe 10 years ago with Nicole Kidman, to bring her up again. And I will say straight out, I didn't like The Golden Compass. I gave it an F. I thought it was a terrible movie. I was bored. I didn't think the effects were good. I didn't think the story was good. So that was all I had to sort of go on coming into His Dark Materials. But I like to keep an open mind. I'm like, okay, well, it's a completely different interpretation of his works. It's from a different director. It's a TV version instead of a 2-hour movie. So, open-minded. Let's go in, that way and see how it works. And it's very Game of Thrones-ish, Lord of the Rings-ish. Like, it's very fantasy kind of thing. So in this particular show, humans have these animal companions called demons, which are basically the human soul manifested. And this show is led by an actress named Daphne Keane. She plays Lyra here. Now, Daphne Keane, you might remember from Logan. She was so great as the little girl in Logan, and she even won a MTV Movie Award with Hugh Jackman for, I think, Best Duo or something. One of their crazy awards. But yeah, so she's got really great acting chops. We saw that in Logan, and we see it again here. But she is an orphan and sort of learning about herself and about the world around her. And James McAvoy stars in it as well, and he plays this dude basically that's trying to help her out. And they find out about this thing called dust, which is not dust that we know, but dust is basically what helps this go on, and it's sort of the crux of the show is like searching for this dust and figuring out what it does and all that kind of stuff. So it's one of these fantasy things that I'm like, I can be on board sometimes. I can get real bored other times. I've never really watched Game of Thrones. It's never been something that's interested me. I've seen the Lord of the Rings movies once, and I enjoyed them. I've seen the Hobbit movies. I've enjoyed a little less so, but I've enjoyed them as well. Here, I think we have a lot going on. And I've only watched the first episode. I hear that it gets better. I hear that the world building, continues, and it is, improving upon itself, and it gets better as we go on, which makes sense, because although I thought the first episode was good, it's a lot of information to take in. It's a lot going on at once, and I was a little bit bored with it, to be honest. It's not totally my thing, and I didn't like the Golden Compass at all. But this kind of fantasy thing, I can get behind it if I think that there's, good acting involved and really cool set pieces and good world building. And I think that this show has that. The acting's great. I mean, just for the two people I mentioned, McAvoy and Daphne Keane, I mean, they're both great. McAvoy's not like a huge part of it, but maybe he will be in, he's in the very first scene of the show, but and then he shows up again, a few other times, but is he going to be integral going forward? I don't know. Let me see actually on the billing list where he's billed, because in the first episode, he was in it, some, but not all the time. So he's way down. He's like 8th or 9th down. So there you go. So maybe he won't be much of a part of it. I don't know, but I don't know. Hard to say. But I think the acting's great. The set pieces are great. The design is great. Like when I compare it to something like C from Apple TV, which was horrible, worst show of the year, hands down. This is far and away better in just about every aspect, I think. So I got to give it props for that. I think it's an interesting concept. I like the whole dust thing. I like the whole, orphan thing, trying to figure out who she is and all this stuff. And I think she is very charismatic. She's got this, I don't know, brooding maybe. I don't know if that's the right word. I mean, when you think brooding, like I think of like, Edward from Twilight or whatever. It's not like that, but she's just got this watchable quality to her. You're drawn to her performance in this, just like you were in Logan. So, a show like this, it is always hard to put a grade on just by the first episode, because there's so much world building that needs to happen. It's sort of like, I don't know, like I guess if I had watched The Mandalorian on Disney Plus with no context, I just think I would have been like totally lost. Or if Star Wars movies didn't exist, they would have to throw so many things at you in the lore of, not that the Mandalorian is like so crucial to the lore of Star Wars, but I mean, I think you have to know the basics of Star Wars before you go watch the Mandalorian. And I think here, because we don't have that, they spend a lot of time building things up and learning about things and learning about characters and this and that. So in a show like this, I think it is hard to judge just on the first episode. So I do think I'm going to have a little bit of a curved grade for this. And for me personally, like I said, I was a little bit bored with it too. Like, I don't think this is something that I'm going to stick with. I don't think it's my type of show, really, to be completely honest. But, I can see quality where it is. The acting's great, the set design's great, the costumes are great, and I think the story is very intriguing. I don't know where it goes from here. There's lots of places they could go with it. So, this is maybe a little bit of a curve, like I said, but I'm going to give His Dark Materials a B+. It's not something I think I will watch again, but there's certainly quality there if you are into, the Game of Thrones and the fantasy kind of stuff, then I think you'll really enjoy it. As for me, maybe not so much. So up next is Dollface. This is on Hulu, and they're promoting the hell out of this. It's Kat Denning in her big return to TV after Two Broke Girls, my favorite show. I hate Two Broke Girls, so I don't like that. But basically, we see in the premiere episode, actually in the first scene, that this girl, Dollface is her nickname by the boyfriend, but she plays Jules Wiley is the character's name. This is Kat Dennings. And she gets dumped by her boyfriend in the first scene and has to figure out basically where she goes from here. Like, she kind of shut all her friends out over the last few years because she's one of these girls who sort of, their boyfriend is their life, and so Sundays were for football and, not anything else. Like, everything my boyfriend wants to do. And so she has two friends in here played by Brenda Song and Shay Mitchell, who hadn't seen her in a long time, maybe years, and are like, okay, so you want to come back just because you got dumped and this and that. So Kat Dennings, or Jules, I should say, has to try and work her way basically back into their lives, and all the while we've got this imaginary sort of world with her, and, like, for example, when she gets dumped with the boyfriend, she looks to get on a bus, and the bus driver is this talking cat that's voiced by Wanda Sykes, and it's got that sort of Ally McBeal type vibe to it, I guess. I don't know if Wanda Sykes is in it all the time. She was in more than one scene though in that first episode, so I don't know. There's some interesting guests coming up though. Joey Lawrence, Macaulay Culkin, Margot Robbie. Margot Robbie's one of the producers on it too, so that's not surprising. Christina Pickles. So there's a bunch of people, I guess, coming up in it. But here's the thing. I think this is a show that thinks it's a lot more clever than it is. I think it thinks it's a lot more original than it is, and it's sort of not. I mean, Ally McBeal is, to me, is the template for the the woman with the imagination on television, especially in regards to her romantic life. I mean, obviously, that's a trope that goes back, Walter Mitty, is a short story and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, Ally McBeal sort of perfected it for the small screen in seeing, things from her viewpoint. And here, instead of sort of, I mean, in Ally McBeal, it was more like you would cut to a scene that's clearly in her mind, like, she's, got her tongue wagging out or whatever, like a cartoon. Here, it's like we're not quite sure at first if this is actually her fantasy life or if this is now her reality and she's actually seeing this stuff. Like, it's never quite made clear. And then later on in the episode, like, she loses her best friend at the club or whatever, and then they're like, oh, we gotta find her, let's look for her, and so for 5 minutes or whatever, they're looking for her friend. And to me, it was like, well, Kat Dennings already did this in Nick and Nora's Infinite Playlist. Like, that's what that whole movie was about. So, like, I don't think it's all that original. I've decided that I think I don't like Kat Dennings. I used to really like her. I liked Nick and Nora. I liked, she plays a small role, but I love the movie Shorts. She plays the sister in that. But even going back to the Thor movies and all that kind of stuff. And then I hated Two Broke Girls. I thought that was a horrendously unfunny show. And here she's just, I don't know, she's the same in everything. And I guess I used to like her, and now once I saw Two Broke Girls, I'm like, well, I don't like this. But she's kind of the same as she is in Two Broke Girls, but just in Dollface now. So I don't know. I thought it was very uneven. And also, I think it wants to be this real, like, feminism, like, go girls kind of thing. And I think that even falls flat, because I feel like the whole concept of, like, oh, well, this girl ditched her friends to be with her man, and like this and that. Like, I guess we're supposed to think that now that they're broken up, she's real independent and everything. But it's almost the worst sort of tropes or preconceived prejudices about, like, clingy girlfriends. They just rear their head all over this show. So I thought it was very disappointing. I was excited, when I saw the cast and I heard, Margot Robbie was producing. I like her. And is this Ellen? Is Ellen producing this too? There's a bunch of producers, I guess, but no. Something I watched this week had Ellen. Oh, maybe it's Green Eggs and Ham, actually. But yeah, so I really was disappointed with this, and I gave this an episode and a half. Like, the thing with the broadcast shows is I can only watch one at a time, so I try to hit them the week they come out. But some of these other ones, like, especially like the Netflix or Hulu shows, I can stream as many as I want. I can stream the whole season if I want. So I watched like an episode and a half of this, and was just like, I just can't get behind it. I was hoping it would get better, but the second episode did not improve it much. So I leave Dollface with a C-. Not good. Disappointing, to say the least. So up next, we're going to talk about Back to Life, and this is another sort of across the pond series. It originally aired on BBC Three, and it's on Showtime. And it's just a 6-episode show. It's a half-hour, sitcom, I guess, if you want to call it that, half-hour comedy. I think sitcom personally is more reserved for like a studio audience show, but I guess they still call them sitcoms sometimes. But this is starring someone who I don't know, called Daisy Haggard, and it's from the production team that brought us Fleabag, which of course is the big crossover for Phoebe Waller-Bridge a couple years ago, and that was on, I believe, HBO. But she plays Miri Matheson, and she's just returned home from 18 years in prison for killing one of her best friends, accidentally. We didn't find out, I don't think, in the first episode how, but we just found out, it was not like premeditated or anything. It was an accident, but she did kill her and did her time. Basically, it's about her trying to assimilate back into society, hence the name Back to Life. In the first episode, she's looking for a job, and she kind of, downplays, obviously, like everything that she's been through, and doesn't really talk about that. She just said, oh, yeah, I went away and did some traveling and this and that, when really, she was in prison. So she moves back in with her parents, because obviously she, doesn't have any money, doesn't have a job when she gets out, and is sort of trying to assimilate herself back into society. At the end of the episode, the person interviewing her realizes from her name who she is, so she has to kind of go through that whole process, and he does agree to hire her. Maybe that's not. I watched 2 episodes of this because they're running them two at a time. So it's only going to be a 3-week show here, but it has already been renewed for a second season, both on the BBC and on Showtime. So we'll be seeing more of this next year, I guess. But for now, there's only 6 episodes, and I watched the first 2. So I think it is the end of the first episode where she gets the job, and then in episode 2 she's working at it. But she goes and talks to her ex from right before she went to prison, and it turns out he's married, but now that she's back in town, he kind of wants her back, and so that's a whole back and forth. After watching Fleabag, and it's funny, like, after the first episode of this I kind of like to go into shows fresh. I don't like to know too much, beforehand. But I was getting major Fleabag vibes from it. So when I looked up, who was involved, and I said, okay, it's the producers from Fleabag and all this, and it's from the BBC, and so it all sort of fell into place. It is definitely trying to work on that whole Fleabag thing. Like, there's no breaking the fourth wall and talking to the camera in this, but just the way it's shot and the writing and really the performances even are very similar. And I guess you could say that with a lot of BBC programming, I suppose. But I thought this was great. It's not as good as Fleabag. Let's not get carried away and say that. But I think plot wise, I think it's actually maybe more engaging than Fleabag. I mean, I think Fleabag was definitely more relational and was more both with her relationships with men and her family. And here it's more of, I mean, there's some of that, but it's more of an overarching, this is what it's like to be immediately out of prison. What do you do? And what's nice is I don't think this show necessarily dwells on that fact. It's not like hitting you over the head with like, okay, this lady went to prison, da, da, da. And I think that's smart, because I feel like if it were to do that, people may be a little turned off by it, because then it's like, okay, we get it, but it's not like a prison show, so plus like, oh yeah, she murdered somebody, how do we feel about that? Like, I feel like if they keep hitting home, they're like, okay, she murdered her friend, I'm hoping we'll find out how at some point, but maybe it's not necessary. Like, maybe it doesn't even matter, because we want to root for this person right out of the gate. I at least I did. So I thought this was a very good show. It's not Fleabag, and she is not Phoebe Waller-Bridge, but she also, Phoebe Waller-Bridge, wrote the show and created Fleabag and all of that stuff. This is not that, the Daisy Haggard, the actress, she just is the actress. Yeah, she's not an executive producer. She did help write it, so I guess that's something. But yeah, I mean, I don't think she has her hand in it quite as much as Phoebe does with Fleabag. But I think her performance is very compelling. It's something where it's like you root for this person. Fleabag, I think. I mean, it's hard not to compare. Like I think it's easy to compare things to other things, and that's why I do it so often. But with Fleabag, I think the character of Fleabag is more complicated, but I think the scenario in Back to Life is more complicated. Like, I'm not sure we've delved quite into this gal's psyche yet, whereas, so far it's been more situational, but I find that to be maybe more relatable and maybe more compelling. I don't know. So it definitely has shades of Fleabag throughout. When I found out the producers were from Fleabag, I was like, yep, totally get it. But I think this is going to be one to watch. I really, really enjoyed it. It's, definitely one of the better shows this year. It's probably in my, I don't know, top 5 maybe. I was thinking of this the other day. I guess come the end of the year, I'll have to do a sort of best of the year. I know TVs run the Emmys in September because it gets through the TV season. But, people do have year-end best of lists. Magazines do all their movies and TV shows together at the end of the year. So, yeah, I was thinking, come December, I guess I'll have to kind of put my favorites into the list there. But this is probably one of them. I mean, I thought this was very good. I'm excited to see the other 4 episodes. I'm glad that it's already been renewed for season 2. That's really encouraging. And I give Back to Life an A-. Yeah, well done. So we close with 3 animated shows for kids. And some of these, look, I'm a fan of all types of, movies and TV shows. Like, I watch all the animated movies just like I do all the R-rated movies. So I do think I have, a little bit of an appreciation on the TV side of things too, even if it's not something that I'll watch. And we learned this kind of with Apple TV Plus when Justin and I reviewed like Ghost Rider and the Helpsters and the Snoopy in Space. Those are shows that are mainly for kids. I ended up going on a little Helpster's kick, and I watched all 6 of those because it's from the Sesame Street people, it's from the Muppets, But so here we have 3 pretty different shows, but they're all based on other material. And none of them are the same material either, so it's all interesting. So Blue's Clues and You is on Nickelodeon. That is, of course, a descendant of the original Blue's Clues from the 90s. And then Green Eggs and Ham is on Netflix, and that is obviously from the Dr. Seuss book. And then The Rocketeer, which is based on, I guess, the Disney movie from 91, but it's also based on, the original source material, which is the comic. And that's on the Disney Channel. So, 3 different shows, 3 different types of shows, really, and all based on sort of previous work. None that I'm really familiar with, except for Green Eggs and Ham. But I never saw the Rocketeer movie or read the books, and I was in college already when Blue's Clues premiered. So, I know what it is, and I've seen, clips of it here and there, and I know about Steve and everything. But that was way after my time of wanting to watch shows like that. But so here we have Josh as the new, host or whatever I guess you would call it. Joshua De La Cruz, and he was handpicked, or maybe not solely picked by Steve, but Steve Burns, the original Blue's Clues host, had a hand, and a say in who he thought would be a good host. And so it's Josh and Tracy Page Johnson, who created the original and voices Blue. She is voicing Blue again. She's been Blue all throughout the whole series, so she adds it again. I forgot about the middle host too. There was a middle host, because everybody of course remembers Steve, but you've got Donovan Patton, who played Joe. I don't know why they didn't let him go by Donovan, but because Steve is Steve and Josh is Josh, but okay. So in the first, I only watched the first episode of this, but we basically meet Josh and we see Josh learn how to do things, how to look for Blue's Clues, how to put Blue's Clues together and what they mean, how to go into the picture on the wall, all the standard kind of Blue's Clues stuff. But what I thought was a great passing of the torch is that in the beginning he's sort of wondering what to get Blue with her snack. I always forget Blue's a girl. With her snack. And so he calls his cousins. He does a 3-way call with his cousins, and it's Joe and Steve from the original series. And then they come back at the end of the show too to make sure Josh found Blue's Clues correctly and stuff. But I thought that was a great nod. I thought that was a great, passing of the torch. And they weren't necessarily playing themselves, I don't think. They both were playing cousins of Josh's, but like Steve is at the Blueprints Detective Agency, and Joe works at some present store. So I don't think they're necessarily playing Steve and Joe from the original series. I think they're just playing characters named Steve and Joe that happen to be related to him. But it's it's a nice wink, nod to the parents of because when you think about it, if Blue's Clues came out in '96, let's say you were like 4, 5, 6 years old in '96, you could very easily have a kid that's around the same age now. So I think it's a nice wink and a nod for parents with that. I was sort of, before the whole audience response, call and response type thing. I guess they did that sometimes on Sesame Street or something. Mr. Rogers would maybe ask us questions, but this and Dora I think really led the way of hey guys, do you want to help me solve the puzzle, and then wait for the response. I guess Pee-wee's Playhouse kind of did that too, and I did grow up watching that. I was probably 12 or whatever when that first came on, so it's not like I was a little kid, but I loved Pee-wee's Playhouse. But I guess there was that kind of, it wasn't quite the same type call and response, but it was definitely him talking to us and sort of letting us know what's going on and sort of asking questions but then answering them himself. Here, the audience is supposed to shout at their television oh, look, it's it's behind you, the clue's behind you, that kind of thing, which I think is great. I think it's really cool for learning. I love that concept. I wish I had more of it when I was a kid for sure. I think Josh does a great job as the host. I think he's, first of all, he's easy on the eyes. I mean, I think he's a cute dude. But he's very, he gets the facial expressions of like, oh, I'm confused. I can't find Blue's Clue, and he really plays it up to the camera. I don't know where they plucked this guy. I don't know if he was a stand-up comedian or, just an actor that Steve had met, or maybe they just auditioned him and he has no history on TV. I don't know. But I think he works really well for the character. I think, he seems to work well with the kids. And look, I'm not that much for like, everybody on TV needs to be, non-white. But I think it's awesome, that he's some sort of Hispanic. I don't know. But I think that's, great that they have him hosting the show, because obviously the other two hosts of the show have been white men. So, I think that's really cool, especially because, Blue is a girl too. The one question no one's asking, I guess, is why Blue keeps having all these different owners, but, that's neither here nor there, I suppose. But I thought this was a cute show. Is it necessary? I would say no. I mean, to be honest, here's the thing. It's not like Blue's Clues is dated at all. The only thing that really makes this, a more updated version is, like, instead of the mailbox, he's getting emails. But, I mean, you had emails in the 90s, so it's like, they didn't do that necessarily on the show, I don't think, but they could have. I guess my point is, the old episodes probably would still stand up, so why make a new one? I don't know. I mean, it just seems sort of repetitive and redundant, because the sets are all the same. Like, they have that same look of sort of the hand-drawn stuff. So I liked it. I think it's great for kids. I was entertained by it. I think it was great that they had Steve and Joe on. And apparently they're going to be recurring. Apparently it's not just one episode, but they'll show up sporadically, which I think is cool. But again, as groundbreaking as the original show was, this is just more of the same. It's not really that necessary. But it was good. It was certainly enjoyable. And I think kids can learn from it. I think it's definitely for young kids. So I don't know if I ever realized how young Blue's Clues was for. I mean, it's for like 4-year-olds kind of thing, like 5-year-olds. So I thought it was enjoyable enough. I give Blue's Clues and You a B+. Up next is Green Eggs and Ham. This is from the Dr. Seuss book, like I said, and this has a star-studded cast. This is on Netflix, and I believe it has already been renewed for a second season. Maybe, don't quote me on that. Let's not say that for sure. But the cast includes Michael Douglas, Adam Devine, Jillian Bell, Diane Keaton, Jeffrey Wright, Tracy Morgan, I don't think we've met yet. Daveed Diggs, I don't think we've met yet. And then it's narrated by Keegan-Michael Key. So there's like a bunch of people, like Ileana Glazer is in it, Billy Eichner's in it. Some of these people we haven't met yet. I've only seen the first 2 episodes, but here again, I think it's 10 episodes total on Netflix, and you can, because it's Netflix, you can stream all of them now if you want. So first of all, Michael Douglas, I mean, how cool is that? That he's playing the main guy, and then Adam Devine comes in as Sam I Am. But it basically is about this inventor named Guy, who is played by Michael Douglas, and he is really, his inventions don't do that well, he's down on his luck kind of thing. And then Sam I Am rescues a chickaraffe from the zoo, which is this very rare animal, classic Dr. Seuss kind of stuff, and wants to return him to the natural habitat. However, he meets up with Guy at a diner, tries to get him to try Green Eggs and Ham. Guy's not having it, but they have matching briefcases. So in a classic case of, taking the wrong case, Guy ends up with the chickaraffe at his place, and Sam I Am ends up with one of Guy's inventions. So, the two of them eventually meet back up and are, on the run from, literally they're called the bad guys in the show, and they're trying to get the chickaraffe, to safety and all this stuff. So that's basically what happens like in the first 2 episodes and sort of the basic premise of the show. And then Keegan-Michael Key is a great narrator, doing all the funny, rhymes, but also sort of, asides for the parents too. I think this show is brilliant. The Dr. Seuss uh, not remakes, but I guess adaptations can go either way. I mean, I really like The Grinch with Jim Carrey. I know a lot of people have mixed feelings about that. I think it's great. I thought the cartoon version of The Grinch last year was like okay, but unnecessary because I like the Carrey one so much. Cat in the Hat was awful with Mike Myers. And I know there have been a few others, like the Lorax I thought was pretty good. But, I mean, this is so great. Visually, and that's the interesting thing about, these three shows, is that they're all visually completely different, too, even though they're all for kids, they're all sort of based on other things, but visually completely different. This looks like a Dr. Seuss book come to life. The animation is not overly slick. It's pretty basic, but it certainly gets the job done. I would say it's more basic than the Lorax movie, even. I thought, that was very, eye-popping and stuff. This is pretty much like the Seuss books. You open them up, and, there's maybe more stuff in the background going on, but I think the creators have really taken attention to detail of that, and I think that's awesome. The voice work is great. Michael Douglas is so good as Guy. Adam Devine is Adam Devine as Sam. I think he's a good actor in certain situations, but he's always kind of the same, so that the character really has to lend itself to that, and I think Sam I Am does, so I like that. Like I said, Keegan-Michael Key's great as the narrator. There's honestly nothing to really not like about this. I think it's so fun. I think kids will like it. The thing that's interesting about it, too, is that it is serialized, because each episode, at least the two I've seen so far, end on a cliffhanger. So, with Netflix, of course, you can binge all of them in probably 5 hours. I don't think any of them are more than a half hour. So you can binge all 10 episodes in 5 hours. Not that you want your kids sitting in front of the TV for that long, but you could do one a day or something, for a week and a half or whatever. So that's interesting, because, I mean, most children's programming is fairly standalone. You come, and then it's not even like, I mean, like, take a look at Blue's Clues. Like I said, you could pop on a Steve episode from 1999 and then put it next to a Josh episode from tomorrow, and it's like they're almost the same thing, other than swapping out the hosts. You don't lose a beat. There's no like storyline or anything. So I mean, Netflix is the perfect type of thing for this, because I think if this was on Nickelodeon or something, and I missed a day, well, then you don't know what's happening in the story. I guess with on demand now too, you might, but no. So because it's on Netflix, they're able to do it that way. I haven't really watched a lot of the adaptations on Netflix or Hulu for the kids shows, just because I'm not a kid, and some of them interested me. Like, I wanted to do the Peabody and Sherman one, I just never got around to it. But I know there's a Kung Fu Panda one, and there was a Turbo one for a while, that Turbo Snail. And there's Troll. I think Trolls has a show. Like, there's shows for pretty much any kids movie property that is a hit and strikes a chord. They'll put a cartoon out for on one of the streaming services, or Nickelodeon or something. But to my knowledge, most of them have not been of the serialized variety. So that does set it apart as well. But I really like this. This ranks up there as definitely one of the best of the year for me. I got a real big kick out of it. Green Eggs and Ham gets an A from me. And you can stream all 10 of those right now. So finally, we go to The Rocketeer. This is from Disney Channel, or really, I guess, Disney XD. And I know so little about cable television these days. I don't know if that's or not Disney XD, Disney Junior, I'm sorry. I don't know if that's a separate channel from Disney Channel. I don't think it is. I think it's more like Nickelodeon, where it's like Nick Jr. during the day, then Nickelodeon in the afternoon, and then Nick at night after dark. So I think Disney Junior is just Disney Channel, but like in the middle of the day for kids. So this is basically, the story of the Rocketeer. It's a story of in this particular one, it's Kit, who's a 7-year-old girl who receives a jetpack for her birthday. In the movie, I believe it was a little boy. And the thing about the movie was it takes place a while back. It takes place, I don't know, in the 30s or 40s or something. Again, I've never seen it, but I know the basic concept of it. But here, I think it takes place in present day. There's only like a couple of clues that lead me to that, but the episode I watched happened to be episode 4, because I don't like I said, I don't have cable, so the only way I was able to watch this was on the Disney app, and they only have the most recent episode for non-subscribers. So I watched episode 4 of this, but I don't think I missed anything. I'm sure in the first episodes where she gets the jetpack, but I mean, like I said, I know the basic concept of it, so I was able to catch up, even though I'm not 7. But so basically, she's this Rocketeer superhero type thing, and in the episode I saw, which was called Carnival Caper, and then Songbird Soars Again. So they do what a lot of the Nickelodeon and Disney Channel shows do and have done. I mean, Nickelodeon's been doing it since like Doug and Real Monsters and stuff back in the day, where they have 2 15-minute segments that make up a half-hour show instead of a half-hour straight. I mean, SpongeBob does it. I mean, a lot of the kids shows on Nickelodeon and Disney do it. So, not surprised by that. I guess that helps too if you catch up in the middle and you're like, oh, well, there'll be another episode on in 2 minutes. So in Carnival Caper, there's Traveling Carnival, and they're trying to steal the rocket pack. It was kind of basic. And then the second one I thought was a little more interesting. Kit befriends this old lady who turns out to be an ex-fighter pilot named May Songbird, and she helps her find the courage to fly her plane again. The reason I think this is set in closer to the present day than the original is because the plane looks like it's from probably the 20s or 30s itself, and this lady's old now, so we assume she probably flew 50 or 60 years ago, maybe. So I feel like it's definitely not taking place when the original did. But again, there was nothing in the Carnival episode that would have led me to believe it was in the present day or back then. It was so nondescript, which I guess is fine. It's not like kids are clamoring to find out what decade this took place in. But maybe one of the other episodes is a little more descript in that manner. But that would certainly be a change from the film or from the comic. They've been trying to get the movie remake, or I guess maybe sequel, off the ground for a long time. I mean, it's Rocketeer's sort of reached like a cult status over the last maybe 5 or 10 years. Maybe more people will discover it on Disney Plus that didn't watch it. It wasn't a total bomb at the box office. It made a little bit of money, I think, but not nearly what they were hoping. It was supposed to be a big tentpole movie for the summer of '91, but then Terminator 2 came out, and Thelma and Louise, and there was already a bunch of big action movies, not necessarily for families, maybe like this was, but anyway, back to the TV show. It's got the same animation style as most of the Disney Junior shows, like Doc McStuffins and the what's the ones with the mask, PJ Masks or whatever it's called, and Paw Patrol sort of, although that's more dogs than humans, so it's a little different. But I mean, it has that same sort of visual style as that, which I think is okay. I don't necessarily have anything against it. I think it's very basic, which makes sense. I'm sure they're not spending a ton of money on these Disney Junior shows. But I thought the storyline was good. I think the right age for this is probably in that. I mean, the range that probably Kit is. I mean, I think it's probably for 7-year-olds, maybe a little younger, 5, 6, 7, 8 kind of thing. I don't know. I mean, it's very basic, but I think it's enjoyable. I mean, it kind of reminds me. I think it's certainly for older kids than some of the Disney Junior shows. I think a lot of the Disney Junior shows are for 3 and 4-year-olds. I think 3 and 4-year-olds could watch this, but I think it's probably more for kids closer to Kit's age, which would be 7. So, but I thought it was good. The story was cool. They had a song in the second part, which I don't know how often songs come up on this show, but the fighter pilot sung a song, and it was a quick one. It was 45 seconds or whatever. But I thought that was interesting. So yeah, I mean, there's nothing really necessarily bad about it. I would like to know what era it's in, but again, maybe if I saw the first episode where she gets the jetpack, maybe I would know that. But I didn't, so I don't know. And it's not like kids are going to care, so I don't think I can't really take much off for that, just because I didn't know what era it was in. Because maybe they're purposely being vague. I don't know, but I thought it was cute. I thought the animation was okay. Again, it's not my favorite animation style. I think it's serviceable for what it does. But it's not very eye-popping or eye-catching. So I leave Disney's The Rocketeer with a B plus, and that's again the TV show, not the movie. Which once I mentioned that I was doing this review for the show, my buddy Merlin, who's a big fan of the Rocketeer, was like, "Oh, we should, now that you have Disney Plus, like we should totally watch the Rocketeer and review it." So maybe we'll do that at some point as part of our Disney Bombs series, because it was considered a bomb at the time, even though it's reached cult status since then. But all right, so that is going to do it for the show. Thanks so much for watching. Next week we'll be back with another TV news and review show. We have the Connors coming up this week. I think we're going to have a Frasier Friday on Friday as well, reviewing season 5 of Frasier, so look for that too. And that's going to do it. Comment below if you'd like, subscribe, all that cool stuff, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Bye.